Get that child out of here. This is a $200 million meeting, not a daycare for the cleaning lady's kid. Please, he's just bringing my lunch. I don't care. He stinks like the back kitchen. You people always drag your problems into places you don't belong. A black maid, eyes down, pulling her son toward the service door, while a room full of executives watched and said nothing. But the boy didn't move. He looked past the woman screaming at his mother, past the security guard walking toward him, straight into the eyes of the CEO sitting at the head of the table, and he yelled it loud enough for every person in that room to hear. "Your translator is lying." What that boy did next cost one man his career, saved $31 million, and left a CEO white as a ghost. 48 hours earlier, Diane Turner pushed a cleaning cart down the 12th floor hallway of the Harrington Grand. 6 straight double shifts, morning rooms, evening offices. Her hands were cracked from bleach. Her back hadn't stopped hurting in 3 years. Her son, Miles, sat in the basement staff room, 11 years old, headphones on, a German history podcast playing in his ears. On his lap, a beat-up German-English dictionary held together with a rubber band. Summer break, no school, no babysitter, no choice. The hotel was the only place he could go. Around noon, Diane got sent to clean the banquet hall on the 3rd floor. Miles helped her push the cart. As they passed through the hallway, he heard voices drifting through a door left slightly open. German first, then English. Someone was translating. Miles stopped walking, not because he was curious, because the English didn't match the German. The German voice, a man named Richter, said clearly, "We require an independent audit before confirming the profit-sharing ratio." The translator told the American CEO, "They're fine with the profit-sharing ratio as proposed." Miles blinked. That wasn't even close. Then it went the other way. The CEO said, "We'd like to keep the audit clause flexible." The translator told Richter in German, "He agrees completely with your independent audit requirement." Also wrong, completely wrong. The translator wasn't making mistakes. He was reshaping every sentence in both directions. The Americans heard what they wanted to hear. The Germans heard what they wanted to hear. And neither side could check because neither side spoke the other's language. Miles' chest tightened. He wanted to say something, but his mother called him from down the hall. He grabbed the cart handle and kept walking. That night, in the dim light of their apartment, Miles opened his dictionary. He flipped to a blank page in the back. With a pencil, he drew 2 columns. On the left, what Richter actually said. On the right, what the translator told the CEO. Line after line, every sentence he could remember. He closed the book, wrapped the rubber band back around it, and stared at the ceiling. He was 11. He was 11, and he had no idea what to do with what he knew. Next morning, staff break room, basement level, fluorescent lights buzzing overhead, steam fogging the window from the dishwasher next door, the smell of burnt coffee sitting too long in a cheap pot. Miles sat in the corner, headphones on, dictionary on his lap, invisible the way staff kids always are. The sous chef, a French guy named Olivier, walked in, phone pressed to his ear, arguing with a supplier. His voice was getting louder. Something about an invoice, wrong dates, wrong numbers. The conversation was entirely in French, and it was going nowhere fast. Miles didn't look up. He just said in French, "Vérifiez la ligne 3. Tell him to check line 3. The shipping date says the 4th. It should be the 14th. Olivier stopped mid-sentence, stared at the boy like he'd just watched a dog speak English. He asked Miles a question in French. Miles answered, fluent, no hesitation, no accent anyone could place. Olivier switched to Creole. Miles followed. Now other staff started paying attention.
A Portuguese dishwasher came in. Someone called her over. "Say something to the kid." She asked Miles where he learned Portuguese. He answered her in Portuguese and told her favorite word was saudade, because there was no English equivalent. She covered her mouth. An Italian security guard leaned in from the doorway. "Try Italian." Miles responded without blinking. A Spanish waitress, same thing. 5 languages, back to back. No pause, no effort, like breathing. "How many languages do you speak?" someone asked. Miles shrugged. 7, still working on Latin. He said it the way a kid would say he was still working on a puzzle. No pride, no performance, just a fact. The kitchen staff gathered around him now, a dozen people staring, some laughing in disbelief, some shaking their heads. The dishwasher crossed herself. But here's the thing, none of them mattered, not in the way the world matters. They were cooks, cleaners, porters, guards, the invisible people, and the boy sitting in front of them performing a miracle no one asked for. He was invisible too. 1 floor above them, men in $3,000 suits were deciding the future of a $200 million deal, and not a single one of them knew that the most gifted linguist in the entire building was sitting in the basement eating a granola bar. Miles didn't care about the attention. He waited for the crowd to thin out. Then he sat next to Olivier, who was still staring at him like he was some kind of alien. "Can I ask you something?" Miles said. "Anything. If you knew someone was lying, like really lying about something big, but nobody would believe you because of who you are, would you still say something?" Olivier looked at him for a long time. "If the truth matters, yes, say it. Even if they laugh, even if they don't believe you, say it anyway." Miles nodded slowly. He opened his dictionary, flipped to the back pages. Olivier glanced down and saw 2 columns written in pencil, neat, careful. 1 column in German, 1 in English. "What is that?" Olivier asked. "What someone said, and what someone else told everyone," he said. Olivier frowned. "Those don't match." "I know. Not even close." "I know." Miles closed the dictionary, wrapped the rubber band around it, slid it back into his hoodie pocket. He stood up. Olivier watched him. "Miles, what are you going to do?" The boy didn't answer. He just walked out of the break room, past the kitchen, past the loading dock, and up the service stairs toward the 3rd floor, where the conference room was, where the deal was, where the man who humiliated his mother was still running the show, and where a translator was about to tell another lie. Miles Turner didn't grow up gifted. He grew up alone. His mother left for work before sunrise. She came home after 11 at night, 2 shifts 6 days a week, sometimes 7. The apartment was small, the walls were thin, and the neighbors spoke everything except English. That's where it started. Mrs. Delgado next door spoke Spanish. Miles was 6. He carried her groceries up 3 flights of stairs every afternoon. She taught him words in return. By the time he was 7, they had full conversations while folding her laundry. At 8, he found German on YouTube, a channel about World War II history. He watched every episode twice, then 3 times. Then he started pausing and repeating sentences until they sounded right. French came from the public library, free audiobooks. He'd sit on the floor between shelves, headphones on, whispering along with the narrator until the librarian told him to keep it down. At 9, the man who ran a noodle shop 2 blocks from home offered him a deal: sweep the floor every evening and he'd teach Miles Mandarin. Miles showed up every single day, for a year, rain or shine, never missed once. He didn't learn languages because he was genius. He learned them because he was lonely. His mother was always gone. The apartment was always quiet. Every new language was a new person to talk to, a new door to open. And the dictionary, that beat-up German-English dictionary, held together with a rubber band, that was the most important object in his life. Diane had saved 3 weeks of tip money to buy it from a thrift store. The cover was already peeling when she brought it home. She opened it to the inside cover and wrote in blue ballpoint pen, "Words are doors. Open every one. Mom." The ink had smudged slightly on the word every. She'd written it on her pillow late at night after a double shift. Her hand was tired, but she wrote it anyway. Miles never replaced that dictionary. He couldn't, because a new book wouldn't have her handwriting inside it. And his mother, she had no idea how far those doors had already taken him. She'd never once heard her son speak German. That afternoon, third floor, the formal negotiation session, Miles was only there because his mother forgot her lunch. Diane had left the plastic container in the staff locker. Miles grabbed it and headed upstairs. Simple errand, drop it off, go back to the basement, stay invisible. But the third floor wasn't the...
No one moved. No one spoke. Gregory grabbed his briefcase. His hands were shaking. He walked to the door, paused, and turned back one last time. His eyes landed on Miles, standing in the corner, still holding his mother's lunchbox. "You have no idea what you've done, boy." Miles didn't flinch, didn't blink. He just held the man's stare until Gregory looked away, pulled open the door, and was gone. The door clicked shut. The room exhaled. Edward turned to Miles. His voice shifted, softer now, but no less serious. "Miles, I'm going to pay you the same hourly rate I was paying Mr. Ashford. I'd like you to sit at this table and translate for the rest of this negotiation. Would you be willing to do that?" Nathan leaned forward. "Dad, you can't seriously—" "Nathan," Edward didn't look at his son. "This boy just saved this company $31 million. He sits at this table." Nathan closed his mouth, sat back, said nothing. Richter stood. He pushed his chair back slowly, walked around the table, and stopped in front of Miles, a tall, broad man standing over a small boy in a hoodie. He extended his hand. Miles took it. Richter's palm swallowed his completely. Richter spoke in German, slow, deliberate. His voice carried the weight of a man who meant every syllable. The meaning was clear, even to those who didn't understand the words. Respect. Deep, unmistakable respect. Miles nodded. Then he set his mother's lunchbox on the chair beside him. He reached into his hoodie pocket, pulled out the dictionary, battered cover, rubber band, yellowed pages, and placed it on the conference table, right between a laptop and a Mont Blanc pen. Richter looked down at that dictionary, worn, cracked, held together by a rubber band and a mother's love. He said nothing, but his eyes softened in a way that boardrooms rarely see. The negotiation broke for 15 minutes. Most of the room scattered, coffee refills, phone calls, restroom breaks. But Richter didn't move. He sat by the window, looking out at the city skyline, hands folded on his knee. Miles walked over, not because anyone told him to, because something about the old man's silence felt familiar. Richter looked at him, then spoke in German, slowly, carefully, choosing simple words the way a grandfather would with a child he wanted to make sure understood every syllable. He told Miles about his grandfather, a factory worker in post-war Germany. No education, no connections, no money, just a man with grease under his fingernails and a radio on his nightstand. Every night he would lie awake and listen to Allied broadcasts, American soldiers talking, laughing, giving orders, and word by word, sentence by sentence, he taught himself English from the voices of strangers. He built Richter Werke from nothing, from a single rented room and a second-hand typewriter. Richter paused. Then he said something Miles would carry for the rest of his life. "People like us, no one gives us a stage. We build it from what others throw away."
Miles opened his dictionary, turned to the inside cover, showed Richter the ink handwriting in blue ballpoint pen. Words are doors. Open, every one. Mom. Richter read it. He didn't speak for a long time. His thumb traced the edge of the page, gently, the way you touch something you recognize. Then he reached into his jacket, pulled out a Mont Blanc fountain pen, old, heavy, engraved, his grandfather's pen, the one thing he carried from that rented room to the top of a global company. He uncapped it, and beneath Diane's words in careful handwriting, he wrote, "And never let anyone close them. K.R. 2 lines, 2 generations, 2 people who built everything from nothing, written inside a thrift store dictionary that cost 3 weeks of tip money." At that same moment, 1 floor below, Diane Turner got the news. Someone from the kitchen told her, "Your son walked into the conference room. He's sitting with the CEO. He's translating the deal." She ran up the service stairs, still in her uniform, still holding a bottle of glass cleaner. She stopped outside the conference room, pressed her face close to the glass wall, and she saw her son sitting at that table, speaking German. She had never heard him speak German. Edward stepped into the hallway. He saw Diane standing there, hands trembling, eyes wide. "Mrs. Turner, your son just saved my company. You raised a remarkable young man." Diane covered her mouth. Tears ran down her face. She couldn't speak. No one had ever called her son remarkable before. The break ended. Everyone returned to their seats, but the room felt different now. The polished confidence was gone. In its place, tension, suspicion. The Germans whispered among themselves. The Americans sat stiff, unsure what to trust anymore. Richter stood. He didn't sit back down. He placed both hands flat on the table and spoke in German, firm, commanding, the voice of a man who had been deceived and would not allow it to happen again. Miles translated. "Herr Richter says every term discussed in previous sessions is void. He wants to renegotiate the entire deal from the beginning, in German only." Miles paused. "And he wants me to translate, no one else." Nathan shifted in his chair. The attorneys exchanged glances. Edward simply nodded. "Then that's what we'll do." Miles pulled his chair closer to the table. The dictionary sat in front of him, cracked spine, rubber band, pencil notes in the margins, surrounded by laptops, legal binders, and crystal water glasses. An 11-year-old boy at a $200 million table. And so it began. The first 4 clauses went smoothly. Richter spoke. Miles translated, precise, steady, capturing not just the words, but the weight behind them. His voice was young, but his vocabulary was sharp. The contrast was almost unsettling, a child's tone delivering a grown man's language. Richter would pause after each section, look at Miles, nod, then continue. Edward took notes. Nathan, who hadn't written a single word all day, picked up a pen and started writing too. By the 5th clause, something shifted. Richter began speaking faster. His sentences grew longer, more technical. The legal language thickened. Liability structures, indemnification provisions, performance guarantees. Miles kept up, sentence after sentence, no hesitation, no mistakes. The room started to relax, shoulders dropped, pens moved. For the first time in 2 days, both sides were actually hearing each other. Then Richter hit him with it, a word Miles had never encountered, a long, compound German legal term, the kind of word that exists only in contracts and courtrooms. Richter said it once, embedded in a complex sentence about performance bonds. Miles stopped. The room went still. Nathan looked up. The attorneys froze. Even Richter paused, watching the boy's face for the first time with something close to a test in his eyes. Miles looked at Richter. He didn't panic. He didn't guess. He didn't pretend he understood. He said calmly, clearly, "Sir, I don't know that word. Could you explain what it means so I can translate the meaning instead of guessing wrong?" For a moment, no one breathed. Then Richter smiled, not a polite smile, not a business smile, a real one, the first genuine smile anyone had seen from him in 2 days of negotiations. "That," Richter said in German, "is exactly what an honest translator should do." The room exhaled. A few of the German executives nodded. One of them actually leaned over and whispered something to his colleague, something that looked a lot like admiration. Gregory would have guessed. Gregory would have twisted the word into whatever served him. But Miles admitted what he didn't know, and that single act of honesty made him more trustworthy than any credential ever could. The negotiation continued. 1 hour, 2, 3. Miles drank 1 glass of water. He didn't complain. He didn't fidget. He translated clause after clause, patiently, accurately, stopping only when he needed clarification, and never pretending to know more than he did. Then came the wall. Richter wanted 12% equity. Calloway offered 5. Both men dug in. The conversation slowed to a crawl. Sentences got shorter, tones harder. Richter folded his arms. Edward leaned back. The attorneys started.
Nathan Calloway stared at Miles across the table. The look on his face was something he'd probably never felt before in a boardroom. Shame mixed with something dangerously close to awe. Miles didn't celebrate. He asked to be excused, said he needed the restroom. He walked out into the hallway. The door closed behind him. The noise faded, and then alone, finally alone, he exhaled. His hands were shaking. His legs felt weak. He leaned against the wall and slid down until he was sitting on the carpet. He pulled out the dictionary, opened it to the inside cover. His mother's handwriting, blue ballpoint pen. "Words are doors, open every one." Below it, Arthur's fountain pen, "and never let anyone close them." Miles closed the book, pressed it against his chest, and closed his eyes. He was 11 years old, and he had just closed a $200 million deal. 1 week later, the Harrington Grand Lobby looked different at night. The marble floors gleamed under warm chandelier light. Fresh flowers lined every table. Staff in black vests moved quietly between guests, carrying silver trays of champagne and hors d'oeuvres. This was the formal signing dinner, the final handshake between Calloway Industrial and Arthur Werker. $200 million. Lawyers, executives, board members, and partners all gathered in the same lobby where just 7 days earlier a woman in a cleaning uniform had been told she smelled like bleach and didn't belong. Same lobby, same chandelier, same marble floor. But tonight, 2 people walked through the front door who had never used it before. Diane Turner wore a simple black dress, new, bought by Edward's assistant, still carrying the faint crease of being folded in a shopping bag that morning. Her hands, usually cracked and dry from chemicals, were moisturized and still. She held her chin up, but her eyes moved quickly, nervously, like a woman waiting to be told she was in the wrong place. No one told her that. Next to her stood Miles. His first suit, dark navy, white shirt, no tie,
because neither of them knew how to tie one, and neither of them asked for help. His shoes were new too, but he walked the way he always walked, quiet, steady, watching everything. In the inside pocket of his jacket, right against his chest, the dictionary, worn cover, rubber bands, 2 handwritten lines on the inside. He brought it the way a soldier brings a medal, not to show, to remember. Brenda Hollister stood behind the reception desk. She saw them walk in. Her face didn't move, not a smile, not a frown, just the blank expression of a woman who understood that the ground beneath her had shifted and there was nothing she could do about it. She said nothing. The room was already full when Edward Calloway stepped up to a small podium near the head table. He didn't use notes. He didn't need them. 1 week ago, he began, a boy walked into a conference room in this hotel. He wasn't on the guest list. He didn't have a badge or a title or a law degree. He was wearing a hoodie and carrying a plastic lunchbox. A few quiet laughs from the audience. Security was called. He was told to leave. The hotel manager wanted him removed. My own son, my VP, called it embarrassing. Nathan, sitting in the second row, lowered his eyes. But that boy had something no one else in that room had. Not the lawyers, not the translators, not me. Edward paused. He had the truth, and he had the courage to say it out loud to a room full of people who didn't want to hear it. Edward looked directly at Miles. His name is Miles. He is 11 years old, and he saved this company $31 million with a thrift store dictionary and a conscience that none of us could match. Miles stood. The room broke into applause, not polite applause, the kind that starts slow and builds, the kind that comes from people who are clapping because they mean it. Miles didn't smile. He just nodded once, the way his mother had taught him. You accept what's given with grace, not performance. Then Klaus Richter rose. He walked to the podium with the slow, deliberate steps of a man about to say something he had been thinking about for 7 days. In my family, Richter began, through a new translator, a woman Edward had hired 2 days ago. Talent is not inherited, it is built. My grandfather was a factory worker. He had nothing but a radio and a desire to understand the world beyond his own language. He turned to face Miles. I see my grandfather in this boy, and I believe the best way to honor what happened in that conference room is not with a speech, but with a commitment. Richter announced the creation of the Arthur Calloway Youth Language Initiative, a fully funded scholarship for underprivileged children with linguistic talent. Tuition covered from elementary school through university. A summer residency program in Germany. Mentorship from professional translators and linguists across Europe. The first recipient, Miles Turner. The room erupted again, louder this time. Diane pressed her fingers to her lips. Her eyes were already red. Arthur reached beneath the podium and lifted a box. Inside, a brand-new German-English dictionary, leather-bound, gold-embossed lettering on the front. On the cover, engraved in clean serif type, for the boy who proved that words are doors. He handed it to Miles. Miles held it with both hands, ran his thumb across the smooth leather. It was beautiful, perfect, the kind of book he had dreamed about owning in the library when he was 8 years old, sitting on the floor between shelves, whispering along with French audiobooks. Then he reached into his jacket pocket and pulled out the old one, battered, peeling, rubber bands stretched thin, pages yellowed and soft from being turned 1,000 times. He set it on the table, right next to the new one. He kept both. Arthur looked down at those two dictionaries sitting side by side, one worth $100, one worth 3 weeks of a cleaning woman's tips, and he understood completely, instantly, which one mattered more. He nodded, said nothing, because nothing needed to be said. Edward returned to the podium one last time. "I want to introduce one more person tonight. She's not a CEO, she's not on any board. She works in this hotel, and she's worked here longer than most of us knew it existed." He extended his hand toward the second row. "This is Diane Turner. She raised this boy alone, 2 shifts a day, 6 days a week. If you want to understand where talent comes from, it comes from sacrifice you never see." Diane stood slowly. Her hands were shaking. The entire room rose with her, a standing ovation for a cleaning woman in the lobby of the hotel where she scrubbed floors. She covered her face, and for the first time in longer than she could remember, she cried. Not because she was tired, not because she was hurt, but because someone finally saw her. After the dinner, Nathan Calloway found Diane near the coat check. He stood in front of her, hands in his pockets, jaw tight, the look of a man forcing himself to do something that didn't come naturally. "Mrs. Turner, I owe you and your son an apology. I was wrong." Diane looked at him, steady, calm, the same quiet dignity she carried when she was being screamed at in this very lobby a week ago. "You weren't wrong to doubt," she said. "You were wrong who to doubt." Nathan nodded. He had no answer for that, because she was right. Near the back of the room, Brenda Hollister stood alone. She watched Miles walk past with his mother. As he passed, she spoke quietly, almost to herself. "That boy, he translates well." Miles heard her. He glanced over, gave her a small nod, then kept walking. He didn't need her approval. He had already received it from the people that mattered. Miles Turner entered the Arthur Calloway language program the following fall. Within 2 years, he was fluent in 9 languages, not 7.